Welcome to the Diary Anthology October recap of the Diary Anthology pod. Basically, I'm just going to read the stories and cut them up in here. Hopefully, this works out easier. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read them basically in the order that they came out. I've been releasing them since the beginning of the month, and I'm just going to edit it all together soon and then release that like that tomorrow. So hopefully we're having fun here. It was very fun to write all these stories because I write so much stuff all the time, and it's just pretty fun. Anyways, let's go to the first one. Okay, we're gonna start with Mixed Up Teen, which came out on the 2nd of October. I'm just gonna read it straight off. And yeah, these are definitely problematic stories. You already knew that if you watched the other ones. September 2nd, 2012. Last entry 2 weeks ago. Different book filled with new pages. Dear Diary, this is the weirdest. Well, Dear Diary, the weirdest thing happened in school today. It's not like Jason putting his dick in the gutter and getting bit by a rat weird, more like Leighton when she thought New York was its own separate country. So I'm having breakfast with my friends in the courtyard, planning out our junior years, discussing the usual. Kayla's once again getting way too graphic about the cartoons she'd like to bang. She has this thing for American Dad Gross. When I notice something out of the corner of my eye, I see in a sea of blue-eyed brunettes, sprinkled with gingers pale as the day is long. She thought I saw a fellow black girl. She's left the cafeteria too fast to be sure, but if it was true, I'd surely know by the end of the day. I mean, she wouldn't be hard to miss at this school. There's only three of us, six black students total. Seven if you count that towel head girl from Morocco. Though she doesn't seem very African to me. But neither three, six, or seven would suffice for me. If I had ever seen one more, it presented a problem. We'd all reluctantly gone to the same school since sixth grade. We created an ecosystem. Though it kind of looked like a gradient, of which I was at the top and the bottom was Rashida and Dexter, two anime dorks who loved nothing more than to watch Sailor Moon and geek out over those backward comic books. Mangoes, I think they're called. When they started dating freshman year, I brilliantly and affectionately came up with the nickname the charcoal couple for obvious reasons. They were not fond of it, but it stuck, so I couldn't have bothered them as much. Just above them was Kurt and his brother Terrence, and Shart. Shart would do anything on a dare, including wake up a sleeping teacher with a fart break in 8th grade, hence the nickname. Boys can be so nasty. A little higher up than her was Bookworm Brenda, aka Essay Star, aka Poison Ivy, because all she'd ever do with her essay money was buy seeds and plants. And maybe because everyone she slept with was hella itchy the next day, but that's probably unrelated. Finally, way, way, way above all of them was me, Allison Austin, one of the four most popular girls in school, beloved, named, worshipped. I am. Same for my friends Leighton, Kayla, and of course the queen bee herself, Trixie. Trixie that she picked me over Rashida and Brenda because I was prettier than them. I'd have to agree. She was right. It's an indisputable fact. God must love me more than them. I can tell it fills them with jealousy. But it's not my fault. My nose and my hips aren't as wide as theirs, that my hair isn't as kinky and nappy. I didn't ask to be this biracial bombshell that pulls envy from them like music from a harp. It's almost as if they're prejudiced against my white side. Now, isn't that a damn shame? Like, bitch, it's 2012, racism is over, get with the times. Nevertheless, this kept me separate from them, a hierarchy I've always stood to gain a lot from by perpetuating. But if someone was prettier than them, where would they fit in? And what would it mean for me? And what if she has a pool at her house? And what if that pool was filled with jello? Or even better, grandma's banana pudding. I should have brought more from Alabama this summer. I could really go for some right now. Damn it, my ADHD is acting up again. What was I? Oh, yeah. So, even the possibility of another one of us frightened me to no end. I almost go up to follow her, but Trixie stopped me. Where are you going, Cricket? She'd given me that nickname after her uncle called me that, called me something like that the first time at her house. Moon Cricket, I think, isn't it cute? Oh, nowhere. I just thought I saw a cute purse. As I said, I'd know by the end of the day. No need to make waves about it. The bell rang as we all went to homeroom. Layton and I were luckily paired in the ABs. We picked seats next to each other while I explained to her for the fifth year in a row what alphabetical means and what last names are. I don't expect to stick, but a girl can hope. When they finished roll call, I waved goodbye to her and walked the first period, creative writing, followed by literature, followed by chemistry. How was I supposed to set the day? To start as a morning person, I felt it was best to give that part of my day to my academic strengths. I went to Miss Hilton's class, barely heard of her, though my upper class friends thought she was nice. I sat in the second row of the front as other students gathered. One by one, I saw faces ranging from vaguely familiar to second-tier friends from years past. Class was almost full, and then I saw her, a face full of freckles, 5 dirty blonde braids down her back, and eyes as dark brown as clear motor oil, ethnically ambiguous to some, yet painstakingly clear of it. There was another mixed girl at our school today, and even worse, there was another black girl at our school today, and even worse, she was mixed like me. I was caught in a haze, completely unprepared for this. I didn't even bring my mini periodic table. I was caught in a haze, completely unprepared for this. I didn't even bring my mini periodic table. What was I supposed to do? What was supposed to be a xenon day at best had turned into uranium because I was feeling very unstable. The only thing that snapped me back was the bell. I was so flustered that I didn't even notice she had sat next to me. Yo, what's up? You ever had this teacher before? She asked me. No, 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 no. I answered. I answered, trying to keep it together. What was I doing, even talking to her? Had anyone been paying attention, they might mistake us for friends or even worse, cousins. If there's one thing my white friends love, it's their related rumor, especially among minorities. They once asked Brenda and Daphne if they were secret siblings simply because they were both Asian and they both had a crush on John Oliver. That's ridiculous. We all know Larry Wilmore is the hot one on The Daily Show. Okay, well, oh, okay. Well, she's probably cool. I saw she had a glow stick on her desk. By the way, my name is D. She was interrupted by Miss H. All right, everyone settle down. Put the money in the bag. Nobody moves. Nobody gets hurt. Oh wait, that's my other job. I giggled, but I think it went over everyone's head. I think it went over everyone else's head. She introduced herself and explained the class. Then, in a roundabout way, she gave a room. She gave room for new students. Well, obviously, you're all new to me, but if there's anyone who hasn't been around the class the last 11 years, feel free to tell the class about yourself. The girl got up and walked me to the teacher, and walked up, the girl got up and walked up to the teacher. I listened closely. On this, any edge I could get on the situation, I needed to take. Morning, y'all. I'm Divine from Miami, Liberty City in particular. We moved to Plainville when my father's job transferred him again. but it's nothing. I like playing GTA and Spike Lee movies, and I look forward to kicking it with y'all this year. She said in her urban accent, "Ooh, I'm divine. Clearly, I'm God's gift to the world." I'm projecting a little bit, but that's what it feels like. She thinks she's so sophisticated for liking some director that no one's ever heard of. So interesting, because she's not obsessed with Twilight like the rest of us. She came back and sat down. The rest of the period was mostly more exposition for Mrs. H, which I turned which I tuned out trying to figure out how I'd spin the new girl into my friends. I could have said she was foreign, but that's too easy to disprove, or maybe that she. And that's the end of the story, because as you guys might have known in my descriptions, I was always only intending to write stories that I hadn't finished, and I still do. But this was like truly actually not finished. Like I didn't get to the end of this at all. This was meant to be like a book one day, but we never got anywhere.
All right, so get ready because today we are diving headfirst into some seriously juicy stuff. About high school hierarchy, race, identity, the whole shebang, all through these incredibly revealing diary entries of a student named, well, she calls herself Allison.
And yeah, her perspective is just, it's really something, especially considering this was all the way back in 2012. It really gives you a glimpse into how things were, back then.
Yeah, and she does not hold back. Right from day one, Allison just lays out this whole ranking system, like this intricate web within the black student population at her school. It's kind of mind-blowing.
It really is. And what's fascinating is how she positions herself within all of it, right? This isn't just your typical, like, teenage popularity contest. Allison's very aware that she's biracial, and that adds a whole other layer to this whole mix.
You're totally right. It's almost like she's, how do I put this? It's like she's internalized this societal standard of beauty, and she uses it to kind of set herself apart. Like, she even refers to some black students with these, well, kind of harsh nicknames, like the charcoal couple.
Yeah, and that language is definitely intentional. Like when she says, and I quote, "It's not my fault that my nose and hips aren't as wide as theirs, my hair not as kinky and nappy." It's like, whoa, okay. She is very aware that being biracial plays into how people see her, how attractive they find her. She even suggests that other black students are jealous.
Wow, it's a really complicated dynamic, right? Because she's both benefiting from this hierarchy within her little social circle, but also kind of stuck perpetuating it. She's part of the group, but also separate. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 100%. And she even recognizes that, saying in her diary that she stood to gain a lot from perpetuating this whole system, this internal conflict she has, this push and pull between wanting to fit in and then also wanting to be seen as like this unique individual. That's what makes this whole thing so interesting, and it really sets the stage for what's about to go down.
Because, spoiler alert, there's about to be a shakeup in this very carefully crafted social order.
Oh, yeah, big time. And it comes in the form of a new student. This new girl totally throws Allison for a loop, and her reaction, I mean, it reveals so much about her deepest insecurities.
It all goes down in the cafeteria. Classic high school drama, right?
Yeah.
Allison thinks she sees another biracial girl, and immediately her mind goes into overdrive. She even freaks out about this new girl potentially having a pool filled with Jell-O.
Okay, that little detail, it's so random and specific that it speaks volumes about where Allison's head is at. Like she's projecting her own desires, right? This need for extravagance, for something other, onto this girl she doesn't even know.
And it's fascinating how this initial fear just morphs into this, like, need to control the narrative. Allison even considers straight up lying to her friends about this new girl, which to me shows just how important her position in this group is to her. I mean, it makes you wonder how secure she really is at the top.
Totally. You would think that someone who is so confident, so self-assured in their place wouldn't be this threatened by like one new student. But it just goes to show there's this fragility beneath the surface, this underlying fear of being knocked off her pedestal.
And, as luck would have it, or maybe it's fate, who knows, they end up in the same class. This new girl, Divine, she walks right into Allison's creative writing class. And, well, everything changes. And of course, Allison being Allison, she wastes zero time scoping Divine out. Her diary entry, I swear, it's like dripping with judgment as she describes how Divine looks.
It's so interesting what she chooses to focus on, like Divine's freckles, the way she's got her hair in braids, even what Allison calls, get this, an urban accent. It's almost as if she's trying to pinpoint the exact things that make Divine different.
Yeah, and you got to remember, this is 2012 we're talking about here. Social media is not what it is now, so those first impressions, those in-person vibes, they carried way more weight back then.
Oh, absolutely. This is like pure, unfiltered Allison. What she decides to zero in on, it says just as much about her own insecurities as it does about this new girl.
For sure. And then there's the whole Spike Lee thing. Divine mentions that she's a fan, loves his movies, and Allison's basically like internally rolling her eyes.
She even goes as far as to call him some director no one's ever heard of, which, come on, feels very deliberate. It's like she's trying to downplay Divine's interests, make him seem less cool, especially in their mostly white school.
It's that classic thing, right? Where our own biases, they totally color how we see other people. Divine's just being herself, putting her interests out there, and Allison takes it as some kind of threat, like a challenge to her carefully constructed image or something.
And this right here, is where we start to see that idea of the mulatress dichotomy popping up. Even though Allison never actually uses those words herself, it's this whole concept, often seen in books and movies, that biracial women, especially lighter-skinned ones, are caught between these two worlds. Navigating all these expectations and stereotypes, it's a lot.
Okay, so how does that connect to what Allison's going through with Divine?
Well, it seems like Allison's internalized parts of that dichotomy, like she distances herself from what she sees as, I don't know, maybe the typical Black experience, which in her mind is represented by the other Black students at school.
Right.
But then at the same time, she's super aware of her own Blackness, and Divine showing up, it forces her to confront that complexity head on.
It's like she's looking for a way to categorize Divine, to make her fit into this neat little box of race and social hierarchy, and it's just not happening. Divine doesn't fit into those neat categories.
And that makes Allison uncomfortable. This new girl, with her love of Spike Lee and just being unapologetically herself, it challenges the social order Allison's built up in her mind. Divine represents a different way to be biracial, one that doesn't need comparison or hierarchy.
Which, let's be real, is totally valid. There's no right way to be biracial. It's a deeply personal thing.
100%. But for Allison, who's still figuring all this out in the middle of, high school drama, Divine's presence is seriously unsettling.
Totally. And that's where the diary entry kind of leaves us hanging.
Yeah.
Right? With Allison trying to process all these complicated feelings, not sure what her next move is. It's like a dilemma. That you try to be friends with Divine, ignore her, maybe even try to sabotage her.
Total cliffhanger. And the way Allison decides to deal with this, it's going to tell us a lot about how her own biases and insecurities shape the way she acts.
It's like this whole encounter with Divine, it kind of throws a wrench in Allison's whole world.
Yeah.
Like it makes her question everything she thought she knew about her place in the social scene, maybe even her own identity.
Yeah, totally. And it all comes back to that line we talked about earlier where Allison says she stood to gain a lot from perpetuating that whole hierarchy. Divine showing up disrupts that whole system. It's like suddenly Allison's seeing the cracks in her own way of looking at things.
Right. And the way she processes all of that, even if it's subconscious, that's what makes these diary entries so fascinating to me. It's like a peek into what it's really like to be a teenager, trying to figure out where you belong, especially with all the complications of race and identity thrown in.
And it's important to keep in mind the context of all this, too. 2012, it was a different world. Social media wasn't the behemoth it is now. So those social dynamics, those face-to-face interactions in a physical high school, they were everything.
Absolutely. And in that environment, Allison's dealing with this mulatress dichotomy we talked about, even if she doesn't realize it. She's drawn to the stereotypes tied to Blackness, but then also kind of put off by them. And Divine just throws all that into sharp focus.
What I find really interesting is that Allison never actually says what she wants her relationship with Divine to be. Does she want to be friends? Avoid her completely. Compete with her. That's what makes Allison's dilemma so relatable, I think.
It's that classic human struggle, right? Wanting to fit in, but also wanting to stand out. We all want a place in the social order, but we also want to feel special, unique. And being a teenager, that just throws gasoline on those desires, especially in high school, where those social circles are practically set in stone.
Exactly. And as we wrap up this deep dive, it leaves us with a lot to think about. Allison's story, even though it happened back in 2012, it still speaks to the complexities of race, identity, belonging, things that we're all still grappling with today. It's a good reminder that those internal conflicts, those moments of self-reflection, questioning everything, it's all part of being human.
It really is. It reminds us that being self-aware is a journey, not a destination. And the way we handle those moments of discomfort, those challenges to how we see the world, it shapes who we become.
So as you think about Allison and her story, ask yourself, how have you dealt with those same questions about identity, about belonging in your own life? And even bigger picture, how can we create spaces where those complexities are something to be explored, celebrated even, instead of something to be afraid of?
And yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't know where I was going with it. Allison's meant to be have some pretty serious internal struggles, obvious, really blatant explosive colorism going on there. I wrote this like maybe 6 months before I uploaded the first one, which was this one, and that's where we are with that. Anyways, now we're gonna move on to number two. Well, episode two. That's not the next one, which was released, by the way. Episode two was released, Gen X Fire Chief, which was released on October 9th. This was the first one I really wrote like within the time of really getting into Notebook LM. So here we go. Episode two. Dear Journal, gee, I don't know what I'm gonna do. My guys are all over the place. The Milwaukee Fire Department has never been this split, or at least not as long as I've been here. And I've been here and I've been chief for 9 years. Honestly, I think it's these new young guys. Anyways, I mean, honestly, I think it's these new young guys always wanting to show off and be a fucking hero. Well, us good old boys just come to work, punch the clock, and put in the hard hours, and then go home. You know, like you're supposed to do. I mean, the other day, my nephew Chase comes up to me, Uncle Roy, you'll never believe it. Gus and Bert were stealing that jewelry in the apartment fire and saying it burned up. Total corruption. What are they going to do about it? Like, that's any of my business. Look, Gus and Bert ain't perfect. I mean, what kind of arrogant prick puts aioli on a fucking hot dog? Probably some crap Gus learned in Chicago, but who cares? They never had a kid burned to death. Who cares if they steal? They're good guys. I mean, sure, Bert cheats on his wife with his daughter's best friend Hannah, and his daughter's goddaughter is probably his other daughter. Indy fixes high school baseball games, but he's never screwed me or this department over, and neither would Gus. But back to Hannah. She's starting to be a problem. Her husband, another one of these annoying young guys, Bryce, is starting to get suspicious that she's cheating, which she is, but that's her problem, not Bert or Bryce's. Women need to know when to stay in their place. Speaking of which, Isaac's buddy, Ben, is stepping way out of his. He's starting to be a pain in my ass. Ben wants us to help his synagogue host a charity event, trying to pull the whole damn department in on it. Says it's to help refugee relief. What the hell is he trying to do here? Now, look, I got nothing against Jews. I'm not anti Semitic. You ask anyone about me, they'd say Royal Kane is an open minded, Seinfeld watching American. I am, but the rest of the guys, Gus, Lou, Walt, and Earl, gosh, especially Earl, they don't really trust Jews like that, thinking they'll get scammed or worse. And who am I to tell him what to believe? Look, real men don't tell other men how to think. They know right and wrong. What do they need me for? Ben saying, Ben says, we're very passive aggressive, bigoted, or some other pussy ass therapy talk. But what does he know? I swear he and Wes are getting on my last nerve. I break down Wes into two eras, before and after Jesse. Jesse was this little adopted Oriental, or wait, am I supposed to say Korean? I forgot if it's North or South, whatever. She was in Asia before the Howleys adopted her. But ever since she got her claws in the West, he's become all self-righteous and shit, telling us podcasts to listen to and articles to read. Wants us to educate ourselves on more than just our white male experiences, as if he's not the same thing we are. Oh man, before he met her, he was a good kid, just like he used to be. I mean, a tub of lard, still fat as all get out, even by our Wisconsin standards. But He knew how to have a good time and be a real man, probably how he passed his physical test against all odds. But now the pudgy bastard's a whole different person. Not to mention he's gotten pretty serious about jokes. It's like walking on eggshells around him. But unlike the rest of his millennial ZXY or whatever the hell they're called, he doesn't just yell and pout about it. Just last month, he swung on Lou. A week earlier, he tried to choke out Earl. All because they said a few Chinamen in Vietnam War jokes. I wish I could say, I wish I could say those are the only two fights recently. I've caught a lot of shit for how I've handled the arsons in the Hispanic neighborhood, more on that later, the past couple of months. Everyone says we haven't been responding fast enough. Bryce, Chase, Ben, and Wes can't stand it. Look, we work hard for all of us. Look, we work hard, all of us, all week, putting out fires all over Milwaukee. My guys can get every fire in a moment's notice. We're just the fire department. What do you want from us? Plus, I'm pretty sure that neighborhood is mostly immigrants anyways. I don't think they even pay taxes. They should be grateful we help them at all. Chase says, we've got unconscious bias. Who the fuck does he think he is? I was buying my first house when I was just when I was buying my first house when he was just an unconscious bias on my sister's tip. These kids don't know how the world really works. My daughter Bridget says it's really complicated and I'm complicit in a system or some shit. She loves me and doesn't want the world to punish me for my lack of action. I believe she loves me. Hell, who else? Hell, why else would she get this freaking journal after my wife, her mother, passed? But all this other shit, the world is just moving too fast. Or at least it's trying to. I'm just trying to be a good-hearted Midwestern guy who grew up on a dairy farm right here in Wisconsin. I don't know what I'm supposed to do to change these guys set in their ways. And honestly, I don't think I'm supposed to. Like I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. Okay, another very problematic character I wrote, except this one, position of power, lots of things going on.
All right, so you guys wanted to take a deep dive into the Milwaukee Fire Department. Well, buckle up, because this one's going to be a wild ride. We're not just talking fire hydrants and hoses here. We're going deep inside with the personal journal of Fire Chief Roy O'Kane. Talk about a front row seat to some serious drama.
Yeah, this is pure gold from an analytical standpoint. I mean,
Right.
we have a unique opportunity here to really understand the inner workings of the MFD, like through the eyes of the chief himself. His personal reflections, his biases. It's fascinating and potentially very revealing.
He does not hold back. From page 1, O'Kane paints this picture of a fire department grappling with change, this kind of generational shift. He even says it himself. He's caught between the good old boys and the new young guys. It's a classic tale, honestly. This generational divide. It's something we see everywhere, not just fire departments.
Right.
It's about values, communication styles, how to approach problems, and often how these differences can lead to either conflict or innovation. Or sometimes both.
And O'Kane is right there in the thick of it. Yeah. He calls himself a straightforward good old boy, but as you start to read his words, a more complicated picture emerges.
Absolutely, and that's where things get really interesting. We need to go beyond the surface here.
Right.
To understand how his personal views, his language, the assumptions he makes, how all of that might be influencing his leadership and shaping the culture of the entire department. For example, he constantly refers to his longtime buddies, like Gusbert, Walt, Earl. He calls them the good old boys, but then he uses phrases like pussy-ass therapy talk to describe the younger generation. And that includes his own nephew, Chase.
Yeah, that kind of language can be really telling. It often points to a deeper resistance to change, a dismissal of what some might call softer approaches to leadership and communication.
Yeah.
But in a hierarchical structure like the fire department, where clear communication and trust are absolutely essential.
Especially when lives are on the line.
Exactly. This is life or death stuff we're talking about. And that kind of dismissive language, it can create a culture where people, especially those from different backgrounds or with different viewpoints, they might not feel comfortable speaking up, sharing concerns, or challenging the way things have always been done.
And that can have some serious consequences.
Absolutely. In a high-pressure environment like firefighting, where split-second decisions are the norm, A culture that discourages open communication can be deadly. It can also lead to a lack of accountability, where potentially harmful behaviors or unconscious biases go unchecked.
And speaking of biases, we can't ignore some of the opinions O'Kane shares in his journal, especially when he talks about Ben, one of the younger firefighters who happens to be Jewish.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. We see how personal views, even if they're not intentionally malicious, can bleed into the professional sphere. O'Kane claims he has nothing against Jews, but then seems really uncomfortable with Ben trying to organize this charity event for refugee relief.
He even implies that people might be getting scammed because of Ben's religion. It's like, come on, man, really?
It's concerning. It makes you wonder how those underlying assumptions might be affecting his leadership and decision-making. For instance, would he be as supportive of a charity event if it was organized by one of his good old boys? Would he be so quick to question their motives? These are important questions to consider as we dive deeper into this whole dynamic.
And it gets even messier when we start looking at the specific incidents that O'Kane describes in his journal, like the accusations of theft and this whole love triangle situation brewing at the firehouse. It's a lot.
Oh, yeah. The personal drama.
Yeah.
Never a dull moment at the firehouse. But on a serious note, it's fascinating to see how O'Kane navigates these situations because it reveals so much about his leadership style and how he views the people around him.
So let's unpack some of this drama, shall we? Starting with Gus and Bert, the alleged partners in crime with a taste for aioli on their hot dogs.
Though we should say, the potential corruption angle here is no laughing matter. O'Kane seems strangely unconcerned about the accusations that Gus and Bert stole jewelry from a fire scene. He basically dismisses it as boys will be boys behavior. Right. And that raises some serious red flags.
It does, right. And it's not just about a couple of bad apples. It's about how O'Kane's attitude, his willingness to overlook potential wrongdoing, could be contributing to a culture where accountability is lacking and where serious issues are conveniently swept under the rug.
Exactly. And this brings us to a critical point: the immense importance of leadership in shaping organizational culture. If the chief himself is seen as dismissive of potential wrongdoing, it sends a clear message to everyone else that these behaviors are tolerated. And that can have far-reaching and long-lasting consequences for the entire department. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about a profession built on trust. Yeah. The public needs to have faith that firefighters are there to protect and serve, not to take advantage of people when they're vulnerable. So yeah, O'Kane's kind of cavalier attitude towards these accusations, it's definitely not a good look.
It makes you wonder, what else might be going on that we're not seeing? Is this alleged theft just the tip of the iceberg? Or is it indicative of a deeper, more systemic problem within the MFD? Unfortunately, O'Kane's journal doesn't exactly give us all the answers. Right. But it does raise some very important, and let's be honest, uncomfortable questions.
And that's where you, the listener, come in. Right. It's not about jumping to conclusions or pointing fingers, but it's about engaging with this material critically. Thinking for yourselves. As you hear these stories, these glimpses into O'Kane's perspective, what patterns are you noticing? What resonates with your own experiences? Maybe in your workplace or even in your personal life.
That's such a good point. We're not just passively listening to some salacious gossip here. It's about connecting the dots, seeing the bigger picture, understanding the larger implications of what we're learning about O'Kane and the culture he's cultivated within the MFD.
Exactly. And you know what they say? Sometimes the juiciest stories are the ones about people's personal lives. Yeah. Like take Bert, for example. O'Kane describes this whole messy situation with Bert, alleged infidelity, potential paternity issues. It's like something out of a daytime soap opera.
Seriously, talk about bringing the heat. But okay, beyond the drama, this whole thing with Bert brings up another important issue, don't you think? Because Bert's supposed affair involves Hannah, whose husband Bryce also works at the MFD.
Oh yeah. Things are about to get even more awkward.
Right. So now we're talking about how personal conflicts can bleed into the professional sphere, creating tension, mistrust, and potentially even putting lives at risk. I mean, if Bert and Bryce are at each other's throats because of what's going on in their personal lives, how's that going to affect their ability to work together, to communicate effectively, to perform under pressure when it really counts?
It's not exactly a recipe for success, is it? Especially in a profession where clear communication and trust are non-negotiable. And again, this is where leadership comes into play. Right. A strong leader needs to be able to recognize those potential conflicts and navigate them effectively. Set boundaries. Create a culture of respect where personal issues don't compromise the safety and the well-being of the entire team.
And I think it's safe to say that based on what we've read so far, O'Kane's hands-off approach might not be cutting it. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about Wes, because his story seems to be where these generational clashes and the influence of personal relationships really come to a head.
Right, Wes. Remember how O'Kane described him as a good kid, before he started dating Jessie. But then after they got together, Wes starts to change. He becomes more outspoken, starts challenging O'Kane's views, even gets into a few physical altercations with other firefighters. And it's almost as if O'Kane blames Jessie for all of it.
Yeah, like she somehow corrupted him or turned him into some kind of radical. It's interesting how he frames it as a negative thing, like West becoming more aware of social issues and more willing to speak his mind is somehow a bad thing.
It's a classic case of someone resisting change, perceiving progress as a threat. It's easier for O'Kane to believe that Wes has been negatively influenced than to consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, Wes is finally growing into himself, becoming more comfortable expressing his own beliefs and values.
And those beliefs and values might not align with the status quo, which I'm sure can be pretty unsettling for someone like O'Kane, who seems to be really attached to tradition and the old ways of doing things.
Exactly. And that's where this whole concept of awakening comes into play. It's not about being corrupted by someone else. It's about self-discovery, becoming more aware of yourself, your own beliefs, and the injustices that might exist around you.
So in a way, Wes's transformation, even though it's messy and causing a lot of friction, could be seen as a positive thing.
It certainly challenges us to look beyond those simplistic labels of good and bad.
Right.
I mean, is it possible that Wes, by finding his voice and challenging the status quo, is actually trying to make the MFD a better, more inclusive, and ultimately more just place for everyone?
It's true, though. Sometimes it really does feel like the people who are pushing for positive change are the ones who end up getting labeled as the troublemakers.
It's kind of a tale as old as time when you think about it. But what I find particularly interesting here is how O'Kane seems so resistant to Wes's transformation, specifically after he starts dating Jessie.
Yeah, and he doesn't really give us a whole lot of information about Jessie herself. And what he does say, well, it's definitely colored by his own biases, let's just say that. But even without hearing her side of the story, it's pretty clear that she's had a significant impact on Wes's willingness to speak up and challenge the status quo.
Right. It's like her very presence, her relationship with Wes has become this unexpected catalyst for change within the firehouse.
Yeah.
And it's something that O'Kane clearly doesn't know how to handle.
It's like this unintended consequence. Just by being herself, Jessie is shaking things up, and that can be a very powerful force for change, you know? Think about it. Have you ever had someone in your life who maybe without even realizing it challenged you to grow, to see things from a different perspective? They might not have set out to change the world, but their impact on you, it's undeniable.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to O'Kane and his big dilemma. What am I going to do? He's caught between these two worlds, the old ways that he's always known, and this new reality that's unfolding right in front of him. And he's struggling to reconcile the two.
That's something a lot of people can relate to, though.
Totally.
So we're all trying to figure out how to adapt to change, how to evolve as individuals and as a society. It can be messy and uncomfortable, but it's also how we grow.
You got that right.
Yeah.
And in a way, this whole deep dive into the MFD, it's given us a lot to unpack. We've explored the challenges of leadership in times of change, the persistence of unconscious bias, the power of even seemingly small actions to create a ripple effect.
And we've seen how personal dramas can easily intertwine with professional responsibilities and how a culture that discourages open communication and honesty can have some pretty serious consequences. It just goes to show you, even in a profession as seemingly straightforward as firefighting, the human element is always the most complex and often the most crucial factor.
And as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of the MFD, I think it's important to remember that the story doesn't end here. What happens next? Can someone like Chief O'Kane, set in his ways as he is, can he truly change? And if so, what would it take?
Those are definitely questions worth pondering, because finding those answers might just be the key to creating a more just and equitable world for all of us. Something to think about. Until next time, keep asking the tough questions and keep diving deep.
Kind of tangentially causing danger to his neighborhood, but by the way, we're going to get into that later, the one that was released today when I'm filming, yesterday when this comes out. So that's another story. And then the next one to come out, the one right after this. Shout out to Pooja Tripathi. She inspired this one. We're talking about corporate punk. Not a very watched episode, but it came out on October 16th. And here we go. Dear Diary, LT and ST Industries totally sucks. I hate it here. I got transferred here to their corporate office in New Orleans 2 months ago, and it's been an absolute drag. I went to college in Boston, a real city with actual interesting people. And sure, I hated working there too. in their regional office, but at least half the staff was young and sexy like me. Plus, everyone was so sharp and unapologetic. If someone in Boston has something to say to you, they'll fucking say it. But down here, everyone's so southern and fake. No, Yvonne, I don't want your banana pudding. They're like something out of a book or a movie or a play, but not like those cool plays, more like those lame ones where no one dies. If I have to hear Mr. LeBeau is going on a gator hunting trip with his sons one more time, I'm going to jump in that swamp myself. They're all such stereotypes. I can hear my boss, Annabeth, now saying to me, Molly, sweetheart, you'd look like the belle of the ball if you just got your hair out of your face. Who does she think she is? They can't tame me. My bangs are who I am. What's next? They're going to tell me to wear pantyhose and stockings too. It's actually really cold up there. And I probably would if I wasn't trying to prove a point. But I'll never, because they don't get to dictate who I am and what I put in my body. Just the other day, I brought some dumplings and ramen for lunch, and Walton said, "That smells good. Where'd you get it?" What the fuck did he mean by that? You think just because I'm Asian and I brought Asian food and I enjoy it, that I remember where I got it? Okay, this probably wasn't unreasonable, but I couldn't let him know that. I gave him the finger and walked away, finishing my food on the balcony. I will say, though, it's surprisingly diverse for what I thought New Orleans would be. There's two black guys, two black girls, one older, one my age. I think one is like Creole, assuming that's appropriate to say. I wasn't even the only Asian girl, but the other one, Tara, is nothing like me. She's got she's got a husband and a newborn baby. Just got back from maternity leave. What a conformist, marrying a politician, fucking kill me then and there. But she's no saint. I once saw Tara use the stapler on the corkboard where you're only supposed to use push pins, and I love that from Tara. We're not gonna fit into these boxes you made for us and Molly fucking Lou. I'll wipe your ass with your rules. Especially when we get into the minutia of this job. Perfect example, I had a meeting with sales about numbers being up in quarter four, leaving us with a surplus quarter. And I didn't raise my hand to talk. I just said it. They won't police my words. And I do write emoticons in the Slack. No one said I couldn't, but I don't even care. This job is so restrictive. Sure, I can work from home 2 days a week, but if I wear flats instead of heels, they'll say, girl, I bet you're comfortable. What do you know, Brenda? Everyone is always suffocating me with these opinions. Wilma Jean has so many of them. All about her grandsons. Gross. For a company that sells tempered glass and for a company that sells tempered and sheet glass, they sure know how to shatter a conversation. I don't even know why I'm here, other than the food. New Orleans is so backwoods. I guess I'll give it a change, though, since the machine has me trapped here. Yeah, I made her like super, super duper rebellious. Again, shout out to Pooja. She's the reason I made this. I thought that was one of several fun videos from her. So that's why I made this story. She's super rebellious, kind of just being a contrarian to be a contrarian.
Workplaces, huh? They can kind of feel like their own little country sometimes, each one with its own thing going on. The lingo, the way people dress, even the unspoken rules.
Definitely.
Today, we're really diving deep into this whole idea of corporate culture clash.
Yeah.
And we're taking a page from Molly's diary to do it.
Oh, interesting. Diaries can be so revealing.
Right. It's like getting a peek straight into someone's head. Now, of course, we're going to keep things anonymous, no real names or companies, but what we can share is that Molly recently swapped her life in Boston for a shiny new job down in New Orleans.
Okay.
And let me tell you, her diary does not hold back. She goes all in.
I see.
Like, she describes her old Boston crew as, and I quote, sharp and unapologetic. But when it comes to her New Orleans colleagues, let's just say the words Southern and fake pop up a lot.
This is fascinating because it makes you wonder,
Yeah.
is this just about different regional styles, or is there something deeper going on, with her perceptions?
It's kind of like those travel books, right? The ones that are all, don't be offended if they don't make eye contact here. It's just their culture. What flies in one place is totally off in another.
Exactly. And in a workplace where communication is key, those differences can make or break things, like seriously.
And reading Molly's diary, it's almost like a cautionary tale, like a how not to fit in at your new company.
I don't know if I'd go that far. There's something to be said for staying true to yourself.
Oh, for sure. Like, individuality is important.
Molly's not afraid to be herself, even if it ruffles some feathers. Her flats versus heels, bringing ramen for lunch. These little acts of rebellion are kind of great.
Okay, maybe cautionary tale was a tad dramatic.
Just a bit. But there's a balance, isn't there?
Between being yourself and, like, totally ignoring what's expected at work.
Exactly. And, well, sometimes Molly, at least in those early diary entries, maybe misses that balance a bit.
Yeah, like that whole thing with Walton and the ramen.
Oh, right. Remind me about that one.
Okay, so picture this. Molly's at her desk, happily slurping down her ramen. And Walton, one of her coworkers, he's just making small talk, right? Probably like, ooh, that looks good. Where'd you get it? Totally innocent.
You'd think so. But Molly sees it completely differently. She takes it as some kind of comment about her being Asian American.
You mean like her food choices are somehow weird?
That seems to be her take. And it taps into this whole idea of microaggressions. Those little things people say, often without realizing, that can make someone feel like they don't belong.
So Walton might have meant nothing by it.
Right.
But Molly sees it as this judgment based on her background.
And those kinds of things sting, especially when you're already the new kid on the block. And I think this is where her corporate punk side really takes over. Like, she's not one to just let things slide.
She's ready to call out any whiff of hypocrisy.
Exactly. But
yeah.
Maybe not always in the most, shall we say, diplomatic way.
Not exactly winning any Employee of the Month awards.
Right. But then on the other hand, you've got her celebrating another colleague, Tara. Apparently, Tara used a stapler instead of those little push pens. Like, total rebellion in Molly's book.
Right. But then she turns around and judges Tara for, like, getting married and having kids.
Because those are traditional choices.
Yeah, it's almost like Molly only likes rebels who fit her very specific definition.
Interesting.
So we've got this culture clash, unconscious bias, and a whole lot of rebel without a cause energy going on.
It's quite the mix.
Can Molly find her place in this new world of, as she puts it, forced smiles and fake chit-chat?
It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Or is she destined to be the lone wolf, forever eating her ramen on the sidelines?
Doomed. Yeah, I wouldn't say doomed. I mean, her diary, it's just one side of the story, right?
True.
People change, they adapt. Give her time.
Yeah, maybe she just needs a little New Orleans to rub off on her, get some beignet dust sprinkled her way.
Time helps, definitely. But I think what she really needs is to shift her perspective a little. Instead of this whole us versus them thing she's got going on.
You think?
Yeah, like what if she actually tried to understand why people are doing the things she's judging?
Like all that Southern hospitality, instead of just assuming it's fake.
Exactly. It's about empathy, trying to bridge that cultural gap. And that doesn't mean she has to change who she is, just like open up to different ways of seeing things.
Right. But that's easier said than done. How do you actually make that shift? She seems pretty stuck in her ways.
It starts with listening. Really listening. Not just waiting for her turn to talk.
Oh, you mean like actually paying attention to what people are saying?
Exactly. Trying to get where they're coming from, even if she doesn't agree.
And maybe tone down the sarcasm a smidge.
A little diplomacy never hurts. But honestly, I think it's also about finding common ground.
Oh, like finding your people. Even in the most unlikely places.
Right. Even in a company culture she's not crazy about, there's got to be someone who gets her,
Yeah.
Someone who shares her sense of humor.
Or her love of ramen.
Exactly. And, speaking of finding those connections, there's a part in her diary where she talks about this team meeting that actually went really well.
Oh, yeah. She had to present this new marketing campaign, and she was convinced they would hate it. It was a little out there. They loved it, like totally embraced her ideas.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
When you find that shared goal, those differences, they don't seem so big anymore.
And it seemed like it gave her a little hope, like maybe she could actually find her place there.
It's all about finding your tribe
Right.
and realizing that diversity isn't just about what you see on the surface.
It's about all those different perspectives and experiences.
Yes. Like, just because someone prefers sweet tea over iced coffee doesn't mean you don't have anything in common.
Exactly. Sometimes those unexpected connections, they turn into the best ones. So you're suggesting Molly ditch the Doc Martens and embrace the sweet tea. When in Rome, right?
No, not at all. Being authentic is still important, but it's about finding that balance. You can be true to yourself and still make an effort to connect with the people around you.
It's like being a rebel with a team spirit. But how do you put that into practice? Where do you even begin when you're feeling like such an outsider?
Well, it's kind of like, how do I put this? Imagine trying to learn a whole new language.
Okay, I like where this is going.
You wouldn't just, like, memorize a phrase book and expect to be fluent, right?
Right.
There's a rhythm to it, a way people actually talk. You got to pick up on those little things, those unspoken cues.
So you're saying Molly's new job, it's like being dropped into a foreign country. Full immersion.
Exactly. Instead of freaking out over every little thing that's different, she should just dive in and be open to learning as she goes.
So less analyzing, more going with the flow.
Yeah. And like with language learning, those aha moments happen, things start clicking.
I feel that.
Maybe she finds out a coworker loves the same band she does, or like their sense of humor reminds her of someone back home. It's those little things.
Those little points of connection.
Because at the end of the day, most people, they just want to feel seen, understood. And that's true no matter who you are or where you work.
We've all been the odd one out at some point, right? That feeling of wanting to fit in, it's universal.
Totally. And, even though Molly's story is still being written, it kind of reminds us that a little empathy can go a long way.
So next time we feel like the outlier, we should channel our inner language learner. Listen up, embrace the awkward, and maybe even try out a little local lingo.
Hey, now you're talking.
And on that note, dear listener, we leave you with this. What languages do you find yourself navigating in your own life? What helps you bridge those gaps? Until next time, happy exploring.
And I just find it fun to write Now, I will say she's not nearly as problematic as the first two characters. So that's an interesting pivot for me. But yeah, this was very fun to write and hear the story on. Now we take a pretty serious pivot. Everything else has been grounded. Everything else has been kind of racial as well. But then this fourth one, episode 4, Jealous Space Teen, this is where things get really different. Like extremely different. Like this whole thing has become something else. I'm really showing off my range with Jealous Space Teen. And here we go. Dear Diary, it's been 1 week and I already hate her. Every fucking year it goes the same way. School ends and I come to spend the summer with my mom. We have a great time when she picks me up from Halita. We go to one of the moons and eat lunar pockets with the lamb in them. Then she takes me to her super fast, super awesome ship, the Feline. I meet up with her, specialist and ship mechanic Aunt Verita. She hugs me with her 6 arms. Same with her enforcer, Uncle Yalash. Only 2 arms with the same amount of love. Even her operating system, E8012, is warm and inviting with his robotic voice. But then she shows up, my selfish bitch of a half-sister Mitra. I swear, I was my mom's only daughter. Every year, she ruins me and mom's time together. She gets a whole year with her, but Why does she always want to hang out with my mom when I'm here? Perfect example, my second day when we were raiding that forced labor camp on Ferriseth, the jungle planet. My mom clearly wanted me to clean out the nursery with her. That's our thing. I've always had my head in the gardens, and I know what everything does and makes. So why does Mitra go in there with her snatching up all the plants like pistol berries on holiday at a Gloromex store? She's the bee in my bonnet. Mitra thinks. Mitra thinks just because she looks more like my mom with the cool blazers and all the tattoos and sharpened teeth that she's entitled to her even when I'm there. At least me and Mom deliver the tax receipts together. We give 2/3 to the client and say the other part got lost, only to give the other third to the Renaissance. They need taxima trees for air since it's the only trees that grow on Renaissance. It's why I never put any of this on our mom. She may be rough around the edges, but she's as selfless as a cornet trapper. And she's expecting us to be too. Sandy, the galaxy can be cruel and unfair. That's why we have to help each other. That's why she took Mitra and I to the Miradex station on my 4th day with her to show us how the other half lives. I was paying attention, seeing the upkeep work that those families had to do for such little pay. While my sister seemed so disinterested and bored and even wanting to leave. I don't even think she sees them as people. I confronted Mitra about this when we got back to our bunk, where she had the audacity to tell me I was the one who didn't care and was out of touch. In fact, in her mind, no one from Hallida could care. I'll admit I do live in a union-protected, rent-controlled planet, but on Hallida, we have our problems too. The galaxy can't be that different from us. But it's not even just our political divide. It's not even our it's not even but it's not even just our political divide. The way Mitra loves Zoomy comics over Gillespie comics is fucking insane. Terrible taste. All their characters and stories are so simple. Even a Quarstan could understand them. Everyone in the Zoomy comic either either deity levels of good, is either deity levels of good and always prevails, or cartoonishly evil and always goes to jail or dies. No room for flaws or character development or nuance. So, of course, I was beyond irked when my mom dragged us all the way to Zoomiopolis, the theme park that's engulfed with the theme park that's engulfed the smallest moon of Drandar. I didn't like Drandar to begin with, too many power outages, but this made it even worse. Why were we wasting my summer on this bitch's favorite rides? It was a total bust though because I found out it wasn't a total bust though because I found out a secret. Mitra kissed a boy on the gelatinous rose, and he was a Proximite boy of all things. I don't know. She did it all. I don't know how she did it with all those tongues swirling around in his mouth. Couldn't be me. It was around this time I felt something I rarely felt for my sister, empathy. On the one hand, I'd have loved to rat her out to my mom, at the very least get her a full lecture about teenage pregnancy with getting her in any real trouble as a distant possibility. Excuse me. My mom only believed in punishment if it could have gotten someone killed, but on the other hand, I'd faced a lot of backlash for kissing girls back home by fellow Hellidites. Being a predominantly asexual culture didn't take kindly to promiscuity. Meanwhile, meaning my mom and Mitra kind of stood out. On Hallida, any intimacy outside of conception was considered taboo. I'd been scolded by my aunts and uncles about it, often knocking it on. You don't want to end up like your mother, as if that were a terrible thing. Those experiences brought a new light to Mitra's situation. I had to ask Aunt Verita about one of the ways. Her being a Frenchelian, I knew that she'd be open and honest about what to do. I told her what happened, and she said that it wasn't my secret to tell, but when I found out my father's siblings had said, she started getting very defensive and secretive about my mom. What was that all about? Anyways, I didn't tell mom, but believe me, I wanted to. Mitra is just so hard to deal with. But with her eating into me in my mom's time, I'm practically not going to have a summer with her at all. All the adventures they get to have together, all the planets they visited, I deserve that too. I just hope next week is better. Maybe my sister will accidentally jettison herself. A girl can only dream. Yeah, so huge departure from the previous three stories. Not as grounded, very complicated family dynamic here.
Ever stumbled upon like a hidden diary? And you just get that like urge, to peek inside. Well, that's what we're doing today, kinda. We're diving deep into the personal log of Sandy, a teenager whose summer vacation puts our, earthly adventures to shame.
I'm intrigued already. What kind of secrets are we, uncovering today?
Think intergalactic heists.
Okay.
Encounters with alien cultures, and a healthy dose of family drama, all set against the backdrop of a galaxy far, far away.
A family drama.
Yeah.
With a sci-fi twist. Okay, now you've got my attention.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this family dynamic.
So Sandy isn't just on any, summer vacation.
Right.
She's spending it with her mom.
Okay.
Who also happens to be a notorious space scoundrel. Think Robin Hood.
Okay.
But with zero gravity and a much cooler spaceship.
A Robin Hood in space. It's gonna be good, I can already tell.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this family dynamic.
Well, it wouldn't be a proper family drama, right? Without a little sibling rivalry.
Of course not.
Enter Mitra.
Okay.
Sandy's half-sister, who lives with their mom year-round.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The classic sibling rivalry. It seems like some things are universal even across galaxies.
Absolutely. And Sandy's diary entries really lay bare that tension,
Okay.
She's clearly, a bit jealous of the time Mitra gets with their mom. But it goes beyond just vying for attention.
Oh,
they're complete opposites, these two. Yeah.
In what ways?
Well, Sandy mentions being fascinated by the intricacies of different cultures.
Okay.
And loves exploring the galaxy's diverse plant life. She even compares herself to a rare orchid at one point.
Interesting.
Delicate but strong,
Right.
Mitra, on the other hand, is drawn to, flashy clothes, bold tattoos, and straightforward narratives. She's all energy, like a supernova.
Gotcha.
Exploding across the galaxy.
Yeah, I see those contrasting personalities must create some interesting friction, especially with such a unique upbringing.
Yeah.
Constantly shifting between planets and navigating diverse cultures.
Yeah.
Is bound to amplify any existing family dynamic.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that cultural aspect adds another layer of complexity to their story.
Okay.
You see, Sandy's home planet, Halida, is quite different from the rest of the galaxy.
Different in what way?
They have this unique culture. It's predominantly asexual.
Okay.
Okay. And Sandy has mentioned facing some backlash for her own relationships.
Interesting.
Specifically for kissing girls.
Okay.
So imagine growing up with that background and then being thrust into this world of intergalactic adventures with a half-sister who seems to embrace everything.
Right.
Their home planet shies away from.
Right. Yeah.
It's wild.
It sounds like a recipe for both conflict and perhaps surprisingly, a degree of understanding between them.
Right.
Experiencing prejudice, even in different forms, can create a strange sort of kinship.
That's an interesting observation, and it actually plays out later in a surprising way. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's talk about the adventures themselves.
Okay.
I mean, Sandy casually mentions things like raiding a forced labor camp on a jungle planet.
Wow.
It's almost unbelievable.
It certainly sounds like something out of a thrilling space opera.
It does.
But it also highlights the unfortunate reality that exploitation, unfortunately, isn't limited to our own planet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's almost like Sandy's life is this fascinating blend of high-stakes adventures and thought-provoking social commentary.
Yeah.
We see this again when she describes delivering stolen taxma seeds to the Ranasoian people who are facing a severe shortage.
A classic act of Robin Hood-esque rebellion.
Right.
Though it does make you question the complexities of morality, even the face of good intentions. Is stealing ever truly justified, even for a noble cause?
That seems to be a recurring theme.
Okay.
In Sandy's diary, she grapples with the moral ambiguities of her mother's actions.
Right.
On the one hand, her mom is fighting for justice, rescuing the oppressed. On the other hand, she's stealing and breaking the law.
It's a fascinating dilemma, and it speaks to the heart of Sandy's internal conflict.
Yeah.
She admires her mother's sense of justice,
Mm-hmm.
her willingness to fight for those who can't fight for themselves,
Yeah.
but she's also wrestling with the implications of those actions.
It's clear that Sandy is deeply affected
Okay.
by what she witnesses on these adventures. For instance, during a visit to a space station filled with impoverished families,
Right.
she's overcome with compassion,
Yeah.
taking the time to truly connect
Yeah.
with the people there.
And how does Mitra react in these situations?
That's the interesting part. Mitra seems almost indifferent to it all.
Really?
Yeah, focused on the more superficial aspects of their adventures.
Okay.
But is she truly indifferent?
Right.
Or is it a way to cope with
Yeah.
the emotional weight of their reality?
Perhaps she's shielding herself from the harsh realities surrounding them,
Yeah.
choosing to focus on the excitement
Yeah,
and escape offered by their unusual lifestyle.
right.
It could be her way of finding a sense of normalcy amidst chaos.
I suppose when your mom is a spacefaring Robin Hood,
Yeah.
normalcy is a pretty relative term.
Right.
But you've hit on a key point, Mitra's fascination with escapism,
Okay.
which brings us to a rather interesting location, the infamous Zoomiopolis.
Zoomiopolis. What exactly is that?
Imagine like a theme park
Okay.
designed by creatures with an intergalactic budget and a wicked sense of humor.
Okay.
It's like if Willy Wonka
Right.
decided to build a playground across an entire planet.
Sounds intense.
Yeah.
What does Sandy make of this wonderland?
Let's just say she's less than impressed.
Okay.
You see, Zoomiopolis is on a planet called Drandar, a place notorious for its frequent power outages.
Interesting.
Something that deeply irks Sandy.
Hold on.
Yeah,
Sandy dislikes a planet for its unstable energy grid.
I know, right?
That seems like a curiously specific detail to focus on.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's almost as if this seemingly insignificant detail
Okay.
foreshadows a much bigger revelation.
Interesting.
Um,
You're really dangling that bait.
I am.
Okay, what bombshell does Sandy drop amidst the cotton candy and laser shows?
Well, as much as Mitra seems to thrive
Okay.
in this chaotic, over-the-top environment,
Wait.
almost as if she needs that level of like external stimulation
Right.
to match her internal energy.
Gotcha.
It's during a quiet moment between the rides
Mm-hmm.
that Sandy uncovers something shocking.
What does she find? Another alien plant specimen?
Correct.
Or maybe evidence of her mother's latest heist?
Neither.
Okay.
She catches Mitra kissing a boy.
Okay, teenage romance in a galactic theme park?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound particularly scandalous, even for a spacefaring family.
Right.
What's the catch?
The catch, my friend,
Wow.
is that the boy in question
Yeah.
is a proximate.
Ah, proximites.
Yeah.
Now it gets interesting.
Yeah.
Their species is known for having a, shall we say, unconventional approach to reproduction.
Right.
Let's just say.
Yeah.
There are biological reasons
Right.
why a mother might be concerned about her daughter kissing one.
Exactly.
Wow.
And knowing what we do about Halita's cultural norms,
Right.
the revelation takes on even more significance.
Right.
But here's the truly surprising part.
Okay.
Sandy doesn't immediately run to tell their mother.
She doesn't.
Nope.
That's unexpected given their rivalry.
Yeah.
I'd have assumed Sandy would relish the opportunity to expose Mitra's secret.
Yeah. Well, this is where we see a fascinating shift in their dynamic.
Okay.
Sandy finds herself feeling a surprising amount of empathy for her sister.
Empathy.
Yeah.
What brings on this sudden change of heart?
Remember Sandy's own struggles
Okay.
growing up on Halita?
Yeah.
A planet that doesn't quite understand
Yeah.
or accept her own romantic inclination?
Yes, her experience with facing prejudice for kissing girls.
Exactly. In that moment,
Yeah.
Sandy recognizes a kindred spirit
Okay.
in Mitra.
Mm-hmm.
Despite their differences,
Yeah.
their contrasting personalities,
Mhm.
they've both experienced the sting of judgment,
Right.
the pressure to conform to societal expectations,
True.
even if those expectations exist on like completely different ends of the spectrum.
It's a powerful reminder that shared experiences, even those rooted in vastly different cultural contexts, can forge unexpected bonds.
And it's this newfound empathy
Okay.
that prompts Sandy to seek out advice
Hmm.
from an unlikely source. Her Aunt Verita.
Verita.
Yep.
Okay. What makes Sandy confide in her?
Well, for one, Verita seems to be the only member
Mhm.
of their unconventional family
Okay.
who exists outside the gravitational pull
Right.
of her mother's,
Yeah.
dramatic lifestyle.
Gotcha.
Perhaps Sandy sees her as like a grounding force,
Okay.
someone who might offer a different perspective.
And what wisdom does Verita impart?
So their conversation takes an unexpected turn
Okay.
when Sandy, perhaps emboldened by her newfound sense of empathy and longing for connection, decides to broach a sensitive topic.
Okay.
Her father.
Her father.
Yes.
I'm sensing a whole other layer of family secrets about to be unearthed.
Oh, absolutely. From Sandy's entries.
Yeah.
We learn that she knows virtually nothing about her father.
And how does Verita react to this line of questioning?
She gets incredibly evasive.
Ah.
Almost as if Sandy has stumbled upon a forbidden topic.
Okay.
This only fuels Sandy's curiosity, leaving her and us, dear listeners, grappling with more questions than answers.
So we're left with this, tantalizing cliffhanger.
Right.
Who is Sandy's father?
Yeah.
And why is his very existence shrouded in such secrecy?
It's like, what's the big deal? Like, what are they not telling her?
It seems there's much more to this spacefaring family than meets the eye.
Right. And this is where Sandy's diary ends.
Okay.
Leaving us to ponder, all the possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
But even without those answers, her story offers a fascinating glimpse, I think, into the complexities of, family dynamics, the challenges of growing up, and, the universal search for identity and belonging,
Absolutely.
all that good stuff.
It's remarkable how Sandy's experiences, while set against an extraordinary backdrop of intergalactic travel and alien encounters, resonate on such a human level.
Right.
It really is.
Totally.
We've all experienced that feeling of, being the odd one out.
Yeah.
Of navigating complicated family relationships.
For sure.
Of questioning our place in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Take Sandy's changing relationship with Mitra.
Okay.
Their initial sibling rivalry, fueled by their, contrasting personalities,
Totally.
takes an unexpected turn, right?
Yeah.
When Sandy discovers Mitra's secret,
Yeah.
in that moment, she chooses empathy over judgment,
Right.
recognizing a shared experience, of navigating societal expectations.
Of course.
Even if those expectations stem from, vastly different cultural backgrounds.
Yeah, it's a powerful testament to the idea that empathy can bridge even the widest of divides.
Totally.
And it speaks to the transformative power of shared experiences.
Yeah.
Reminding us that beneath the surface of our differences lie common threads of humanity.
100%. And then there's, Sandy's evolving perspective on her mom.
Right.
She clearly idolizes her mother's, strength, sense of justice, but grapples with, the moral ambiguities of her actions.
Absolutely.
It's a conflict I think a lot of us can relate to.
Yeah, for sure.
That struggle to reconcile the idealized image of a parent
Oh, yeah.
with the reality of their flaws and complexities.
Right. Right.
It's tough.
It's a theme that resonates throughout Sandy's diary.
Yeah.
This idea of, challenging preconceived notions, of looking beyond the surface to uncover hidden depths and contradictions.
Yeah. Right.
Just as she discovers, this unexpected empathy for her sister.
Yeah.
And grapples with the complexities of her mother's, morality.
Yeah.
She's also forced to confront the unknowns of her own past.
Right.
Her father's absence leaving a void.
Totally.
Is desperate to fill.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It really does.
How would we react if we were faced with similar dilemmas?
Right.
Would we, embrace the thrill of rebellion alongside a spacefaring parent?
Yeah.
Or would we, yearn for a different kind of life?
Right.
One grounded in stability and tradition,
Yeah.
Would we confront, uncomfortable truths,
Yeah.
head on, like Sandy?
What?
Or would we shy away
Right.
from the unknown?
These are questions that linger long after we, close the diary.
Yeah, totally.
Prompting us to reflect on our own values, for sure, our own relationships, and the choices we make in the face of uncertainty. In a way, Sandy's story, though unfinished, serves as a powerful reminder that the most profound journeys are often those that lead us inward, forcing us to confront our own complexities and embrace the unknown.
Beautifully said. And so, dear listener, we leave you with this final thought. What hidden depths are waiting to be explored within your own story? Perhaps it's time to grab your own metaphorical journal and embark on a deep dive of the heart. Until our next adventure in knowledge and insight, keep asking questions. Keep seeking answers.
For sure.
And never underestimate the power of a good story to illuminate the human experience.
Right.
No matter how extraordinary the setting.
And just a lot of weird stuff going on. I made up a lot of words, a lot of places, a lot of things for this. Just because I wanted to just completely go like way, way out of nowhere. And it was also fun to write. And then we get to this last one, the one that was released on October 30th, yesterday, today, whenever you're listening in the future. This one is where things get like really nuts. Yeah, this is by far the scariest story. That's why I released it closest to Halloween and the longest one I wrote. Dear Diary, am I a bad person for loving my fiance? He's a complicated man, but he means well. Charlie just wants to build a few strip malls to rent out to small businesses, businesses that will help the local economy here in Milwaukee. But to do that, he has to go through some alternative means. That's what a real estate developer does. He has to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Like these gangsters he's helping, the bikers and the Viboras. They're just part of the plan. A very scary, very messy part of the plan. Between them, there's been 5 murders in the last 2 weeks. But that's just how the men settle their differences. Still, though, my friends have been more vocal about it, especially when it comes down to Polonia, where I was raised, and most of them still live. I can hear Elena yelling at me now. Riza, you need to make your boyfriend do something about these bikers. They're burning up the neighborhood. Elena, always the outspoken one, unlike Dolores. I could always trust Dolores to see my side, probably because I'm the only one that truly accepts her bisexuality, not like the rest. The rest of them are only tolerant of it and bombard her with annoying questions and passive aggression. But considering I was raised in a Hispanic Catholic household just like them, I'm sadly unsurprised that I'm the only open-minded one. It's pushed Laura to my side since 8th grade. Don't tell Riza how to run her relationship, she'd say, coming to my defense. Grace and Luz, on the other hand, seemed to care as much as Elena, but they would always beat around the bush about it. Just last week, Liz said, I heard that biker bar in Wilson Park has asbestos, but maybe Charlie should stop going there. I heard that biker bar in Wilson Park has asbestos, so maybe Charlie should stop hanging around there, or even throw his weight around to get it shut down. But that would be ridiculous. He owns that bar. Bought it from Mrs. Willowbrook's estate after she mysteriously died coming back from Chicago. Plus, they act like he's only helping the bikers. He's just as much an ally to the Barbaras. He brought their leader, Santana Vargas, that land for a poppy farm just 3 months ago. I mean, they'd never sold drugs before, but they needed the money, I'm assuming. Heroin and opioids never hurt anyone who didn't deserve it. It's caused some friction in Polonia, but what isn't? At the end of the day, it's all for the greater good. In 2 years, they'll be thanking him for bringing an artisanal coffee shop and bakery to the neighborhood. But, of course, so much of this comes down on me. Latin men already hate me for dating him, but with recent developments, they said I was a stain in the community, a traidora. They blamed me for the drugs getting in high schools, ICE and DEA raiding people's homes for poppies, and just like Elena did, the arsons by the bikers. How predictable. Charlie is a good man, but they framed him like he's specifically trying to ruin our Hispanic neighborhood, like he's prejudiced or something. How could he be? He's marrying me, a Latina. You think he would hate his own future wife? Unbelievable. And it's not even specific. The white neighborhood in Wilson Park where the bikers are, they're going through the same thing. A window was broken and somebody's bike was stolen. It goes both ways. I mean, they're not getting as They're not getting arrested as much or even really investigated, but the police can only focus on one thing at once sometimes. It's not my fault. 15 Viboras have been arrested, 7 of which were deported, and only 3 bikers were brought in at all, and 2 of them were put back on the street. Okay, reading this out loud, it sounds like there's a little racism baked in there. But that has nothing to do with me or my Charlie. How could he have known that this would happen? The biker that burned down the daycare was arrested, and that's all that matters. Thank goodness no one was in there at the time. The rest of the bikers are dangerous, but they're not doing anything the Viboras aren't doing. Charlie even hired a few of them, with the sole purpose of evening the odds. 3 or 4 young men with baseball bats to smash up the bikes. The bikers retaliated by shooting one of them in the back. He may never walk again, but at least he's still alive, and threw some Molotov cocktails at a few car dealerships. But who's to say which is worse? It's all about perspective. It's all about perspective. And everyone has a better perspective than the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. They had the audacity, the unmitigated gall to call this little scuffle a gang war, citing the 17 injured and shootings and burnings in the past month, as if that's such a huge deal. I empathize, I really do, but if no one died, then what the hell were they on about? Others around Wisconsin and even other parts of the country are starting to catch on, throwing around terms like terrorism and race war. They're even compared it to a modern-day Killers of the Flower Moon, saying Charlie's William and Ernest all rolled into one. All because he's seen a few pictures of the bikers leader, Harvey Tristle and Tito Longtail. I mean, he did get Harv, a great lawyer, to get his case dropped. After a few tiny breaking and entering and arson and battery and assault charges. Isn't this him just getting involved in the criminal justice reform? The same thing those liberals who criticize him want so badly? It's a virtue signal, like he says. We can all be seen how they talk about me. The whole Substack articles titled, As Evil as Charlie Nixon Is, His Girlfriend Riza Cruz is Worse. Or the video essay saying Latinos are unsafe in Milwaukee because Riza Cruz does nothing. How could they say this about me? They're calling me the Mexican Marie Antoinette. All this hemming and hawing about how women of color are the future and how they love us, but as soon as a Latino like me tries to marry rich, they try to tear me down. I'm sick of it. Charlie loves me in Milwaukee, and this city, my city, will be better for having him. Dolores gets it. She's seen some of these articles, reported them, and even gotten a few taken down because it's slander, just like the slander that the activist group is doing. They may be called equity tomorrow, but they're my enemy today. Their bitch leader, Jesse Kim Howley, has done everything that they can to ruin my man's name, saying that he's not only caused the gang war, but is making it so that saying he not only caused the gang war, but it's making it so that the bikers win. And all the Latinos are scared off, killed, or arrested. He's making it so that their bitch leader, Jesse Kim Howley, has done nothing. Their bitch leader, Jesse Kim Howley, has done everything that they can to ruin my man's name. Saying he's not only caused the gang war, but is making it so that the bikers win. And all the Latinos are scared off, killed, or arrested, and so he can buy up all the land and buildings for cheap after they're gone. Clearly that's untrue and preposterous. They fabricated a plan like that. Charlie would never do that. They even found some recent pictures of him giving the bikers RPG and rocket launchers. Now, while I know that's true, I also know he only did it so he could protect themselves from the National Guard if they came to town, not to further attack Polonia. It's not even attacking, really. It's just a scuffle. I'm sure he probably gave the Barboras something just as strong. They just never found out about it. The only thing Equity Tomorrow has been accurate about is how Milwaukee citizens have reacted. I'll admit, I live in Commission Row, and I've heard whispers when the white people see me, the extra tension, anger, and fear I notice from them. A few more right-leaning groups around the city have said we Latinos are ruining the city and causing it to burn. Obviously, that's not fallout from any of Charlie's actions, but this does scare me a little bit. A man yelled at me in the store, calling me a spick, saying the heroin I brought here is from Mexico and destroying the city, and I'm not about all that. But this will all blow over soon. Like I said, by the end of this plan, everyone will be better for it, and they'll forget all about this. Yeah, that is the final story from the month of October, and you may have noticed some things like Jesse is the same Jesse that was in the story about the Milwaukee fire chief. And yes, these are the fires going on in the Hispanic neighborhood in that story.
All right, so we're going to be, well, the best way to put it is diving into some pretty murky waters today.
Big city development butting heads with a community that's already on edge. Accusations of like a full-blown gang war here in Milwaukee.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we have this firsthand account, this diary of Riza Cruz.
Right.
And she's not just any bystander.
Right.
She's the fiance of this hotshot developer, Charlie.
Okay, yeah.
So she's right in the thick of it, benefiting from his success,
Yeah.
but also, dealing with the fallout of his actions, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like watching someone wrestle with their own complicity, right?
Yeah, and that's what makes it so fascinating, because she tries so hard to paint this picture of Charlie as, the hero,
Right.
saving Milwaukee, bringing it back to life.
But she can't even hide the fact that he is involved with
Yeah.
two of, the biggest gangs in the city.
Absolutely, and not just involved with them, but actively collaborating with them.
Right, the bikers and the Vibras.
Yeah.
And she even says there's been this spike in violence since he's gotten involved.
Yeah.
She mentions 5 murders in just 2 weeks.
The cost of doing business in Milwaukee, right?
Right, exactly.
But it's clearly weighing on her, at least a little bit. You start to see this. What's that psych term?
Cognitive dissonance.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Cognitive dissonance. She's hit with all this evidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
The violence, the threats.
Right.
But instead of, facing it head on, she just digs in deeper. Makes you wonder how often we all do that.
Oh, absolutely.
Just to avoid facing uncomfortable truths.
All the time, right. Especially when it comes to people we care about.
Especially people we care about.
Yeah.
And the way she glosses over the violence, murders, arson, it's just another Tuesday for Riza.
It's chilling, isn't it?
Right, and that's where that cognitive dissonance kicks in. Because instead of really processing the weight of those 5 murders,
Yeah.
she minimizes it.
Yeah.
And she even suggests that maybe the media is playing it up because of some kind of racial bias.
Right.
She seems to be clinging to this idea that Charlie's some kind of savior for Milwaukee.
Right.
That no matter what he's doing, it's for the greater good. Let's just say he's not afraid to ruffle some feathers.
Right.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Riza is from Polina.
Polina, right.
It's a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood in Milwaukee. And guess what's at the center of all this controversy? Polina.
Wow, what are the chances?
I know, right? Talk about being caught in the crossfire.
It's like she's caught between two worlds. On one hand, she's deeply connected to this community, her community. But she's also in love with this guy, Charlie.
But even she can't ignore it all, right? She talks about this daycare fire. Thankfully, no kids were there.
Right.
But still, come on.
Exactly.
Those are the stakes. Innocent people caught in the crossfire of Charlie's ambitions.
And even then, she can't quite pin the blame on him.
No.
Which brings us back to that psychology of justification.
Yeah.
She's in denial.
Total denial.
Minimizing Charlie's role in all of this.
Well, she even admits there's racism, right?
She acknowledges it, but can't seem to connect it to Charlie.
It's like she sees it everywhere, but in her own backyard.
Yeah.
She mentions the police presence in Polina, the deportations, how they treat the bikers compared to the Vibras.
Right.
But it's like she's drawing this false equivalence, right? Like a broken window in a white neighborhood is the same as the terrorizing
Right.
the Latino community is going through.
And she's a part of that community. That's what makes it so jarring.
Exactly, which is probably why people are calling her a traidora. Traitor.
That's intense.
Yeah, you can hear the pain in her words when she writes about it.
Absolutely. And, this isn't just a personal drama either. This is something that's happening in cities all over the country. This clash between development gentrification, this desire for progress, but at what cost to the people who already live there?
Right. And Raiza's diary gives us this incredibly personal look at the human cost of those changes.
What about that comparison to the Osage Reign of Terror?
Right. That's a chilling parallel, and it's mentioned in the source material. And it shouldn't be taken lightly at all.
Yeah,
I mean, that was a horrific period in American history where the Osage Nation was systematically exploited, terrorized, all because of the oil-rich land they possessed.
Right.
And some people see a connection between that and what's happening in Milwaukee right now.
We have to talk about this group that Riza mentioned.
Yeah.
Equity Tomorrow.
Oh, right. Yeah.
They're not holding back. They're calling Charlie out, saying he's more than just a bystander in all of this. And they've got more to back up their claim, too. Remember how Reza mentioned that the police seem to be tougher on the Vibras than the bikers?
Yeah, like they're getting away with more stuff.
Equity Tomorrow says that's not a coincidence. They say it's evidence that the system is rigged in Charlie's favor.
They're suggesting that Charlie might be intentionally stirring up this gang war.
Wow.
The idea is that he wants to drive out the Latino community, create this climate of fear,
Right.
and then swoop in and buy up their property for pennies on the dollar.
Right.
That's kind of brilliant.
Oh, it's definitely ruthless.
No, totally.
And it's not a good look that Riza mentions that Charlie's been supplying the bikers with all kinds of weapons.
Yeah, that's a big one.
RPGs, rocket launchers.
It goes way beyond just arming them for self-defense.
Right.
It's like she's looking at this incredibly intense and dangerous situation through this distorted lens.
A lens that's being influenced by her feelings for this Charlie guy.
Exactly.
Which makes you wonder how much of what she's describing is objective truth and how much of it is colored by her own biases and, her desire to protect the man she loves.
Right, yeah. And they even released photos of him handing off those weapons to the bikers.
Oh, wow.
Talk about damning evidence.
Yeah, pictures really do speak 1,000 words.
They do.
It's pretty tough to square those images with Riza saying, oh, he's just trying to help them defend themselves against the National Guard.
Right.
Like, what?
That's not a normal thing to do.
Yeah, exactly.
That excuse just doesn't hold water.
It's really sad in a way because you can tell she's scared, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Like when she talks about her friend Alana,
Mm-hmm.
who's terrified of the bikers now that they're,
Yeah.
in her neighborhood.
Right. They're a much more visible presence now, and it's causing a lot of fear.
And Riza just kind of brushes it off.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they're no worse than the Vibras.
It's amazing how two people can look at the same set of facts and come to completely different conclusions.
Isn't it?
I mean, even Riza acknowledges that the bikers are getting away with more, but she chalks it up to the police being overwhelmed.
Right.
Yeah, that's a classic example of confirmation bias.
Okay.
You know how it is when you're thinking about buying a certain phone and then suddenly you see ads for that phone everywhere you look?
Right.
That's kind of what Riza's doing with information here. She's selectively focusing on anything that supports her positive view of Charlie.
Right.
And it's not just the Latino community that's catching on, right?
Mhm.
She writes about her own neighbors, wealthy white folks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're scared of her too,
Wow.
calling her names, blaming her for the city falling apart.
It's like the consequences are breaking through that bubble she's in,
Exactly.
forcing her to face what she's been avoiding.
Yeah, and that's where this deep dive gets really good,
Uh,
because it's bigger than just one woman's messed up viewpoint.
oh, absolutely.
It's like holding up a mirror to society, to all the things we don't want to see.
Yeah, yeah. It's like she's looking for validation,
totally.
surrounding herself with people who'll tell her she's right.
Like, hello, Dolores.
Right. That's what I mean.
Charlie's biggest fan. And it's almost as if Riza's using Dolores's bisexuality as like a shield or something.
Interesting.
It's that whole I can't be racist, my friend's gay thing.
Exactly. It's like that one area of acceptance
Yeah.
makes up for everything else. Right.
Right.
That's a tough one to spin.
It really is. It's like she's wrestling with the truth, trying to make sense of the man she thought she knew with this guy who's capable of these really reckless actions.
It's a lot to process.
It is.
Denial is a powerful thing.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about this diary.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting Riza's version. Right. Her truth.
Right.
Which is very curated.
Right. Heavily filtered.
So you start to question everything. Like there's this line about Charlie buying that bar
Oh, yeah.
from Mrs. Willowbrook's estate. And she just casually mentions she, quote, mysteriously died coming back from Chicago.
Oh, come on.
Right.
There's more to that story.
You think, but that's what makes this so fascinating,
Right.
especially with everything else that we're seeing here.
Right.
It makes you wonder if even Riza is starting to have some doubts about her own narrative.
Right.
So in the middle of all of this, all this talk of development and gang wars and everything, what about the community? What about the people who actually live in Polina?
That's the most important question, right?
Totally.
What's the impact of all of this on them? Well, the most immediate impact is the violence. the fear. People are afraid to leave their homes. Businesses are shutting down. There's this overwhelming sense of uneased distrust. It's like the
Right.
whole community is being torn apart at the seams.
Right.
To understand this whole thing, we have to break down that wall
We do.
and look at the bigger problems that are going on here.
Absolutely. We need to zoom out and understand the historical, social, and economic factors at play here.
Right, because this isn't happening in a vacuum.
Exactly.
There's a reason this is all happening in Milwaukee.
Exactly. And Milwaukee has a long and complex history.
Right.
And to truly grasp what's going on in the present, we need to delve into Milwaukee's past.
Okay.
Things like segregation, the decline of industry, and the ongoing challenges of gentrification.
Okay.
These things are all interconnected.
Yeah,
Sometimes the personal and the political are impossible to separate.
absolutely. And it highlights how important it is to seek out different perspectives, to challenge our own biases, to remember that even in the most personal stories, there's always more than meets the eye.
You know, it's like we've fallen into one of those true crime documentaries where everyone's got a secret and the line between good and bad gets blurrier by the minute.
It's that mystery that keeps you hooked, right? All these unanswered questions you're left with makes you really think about how easy it is to get caught up in someone else's version of events.
Right. And you know what I keep thinking about?
What's that?
What if we could hear from the other people involved in this whole thing? Like, imagine if we had diaries from the Viboras or the police, or even Equity tomorrow.
Oh, man. Talk about a different perspective.
Right.
The same events, but seen through completely different eyes.
It would totally change how we see everything.
It would give us a much more complete picture, for sure.
This whole thing could go from a story about love and loyalty to like a full-blown conspiracy thriller.
That's the thing about truth. There are always multiple sides to every story.
Totally. And it makes you think about the choices people make when they're faced with something they don't want to see.
Yeah.
And it's tempting to look for a simple solution.
Right. Who's the bad guy? Who do we blame?
Exactly. But the reality is it's just way more nuanced than that.
Okay.
And there's responsibility at every level.
So what can we even do?
It starts with awareness.
Huh?
Recognizing that we all have our own limited perspectives
Right.
and being open to hearing from those who are directly impacted by these issues.
Okay, so like listen to other people.
Exactly. Engage with your community, support organizations fighting for change, and use your own voice to advocate for solutions that are just and equitable.
So we all have to be a part of this?
We can't just sit on the sidelines. We have to be informed and engaged
Right,
and
that is-
committed to creating a future that's fair for everyone.
Wow, we started with this one diary entry.
I did.
And it's opened up this whole like discussion.
It certainly has. And you know what? Maybe that's the most important thing here.
Okay.
Because by asking these tough questions,
Yeah.
confronting these uncomfortable truths,
Mm.
that's how we create the space for real dialogue and hopefully real change.
I like that.
Yeah,
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive.
it has.
Thank you for bringing this to us.
My pleasure. Always happy to dig into these things with you.
I really thought it would be fun to connect these stories. Now I do realize I'm putting a lot of real neighborhoods on the map here in Milwaukee. I've never been. I'm not a part of any of these communities. I just thought it would be interesting to write a story like this. I mean, I realize I am kind of making something out of them when I'm not from there, but I'm also shining a light on the very real problem of gentrification. Not that it would ever get this violent, I hope, but it is sort of a give and take. If you're from Polonia in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, feel free to tell me if anything close to this is going on. Anyways, I think that's it. Yeah, that was from episode 5, Rich Fiance, which was released October 30th. And yeah, I think that's it. Everybody have a good November. Make sure to vote. And if you're watching this the day it came out, then happy Halloween. Or if you're listening to this the day it came out, happy Halloween. All right, have a good one. Bye.